Meghan Markle sat down with the famous host Oprah Winfrey and said something that shocked the whole world. She told a story that was very sad and very serious. She said that some people in the royal family were talking about her baby before he was even born. She said they were worried about how dark the baby's skin would be. This was a very heavy moment that made many people feel upset. It was the start of a very long and painful fight between Prince Harry's new family in America and his old family, the Windsors, back in the palace in England. This moment changed how everyone looked at the king and the prince. It felt like a dark cloud had moved over the entire family, and the sadness was felt by everyone who watched. Even though things were very tense, there was a part of the world that still admired Harry and Meghan. People respected them for being brave enough to leave their old lives behind. They moved across the deep blue ocean to California to find a new way of living. They wanted to be free from the very old and strict rules of the palace. They wanted to stand on their own 2 feet and make their own choices. However, this move also made many people in the United Kingdom and Canada feel very frustrated. They felt like the prince and his wife were being mean to the monarchy, which is the system of kings and queens that has lasted for 1,000 years of history. For a very long time, the funny people who tell jokes on television were very quiet about Harry and Meghan. Usually these comedians like to poke fun at famous people, but they were being extra careful with the prince and his wife. They only made very tiny, safe jokes that wouldn't hurt anyone's feelings. It was like they were walking on eggshells around them. They treated the couple like they were made of thin glass that might break into a million pieces if anyone said the wrong thing. No one wanted to be the first person to stand up and say what they were really thinking in private. They were all waiting for a leader to show them that it was okay to speak the truth. Everything changed when a very famous comedian named Chris Rock walked onto a big stage for a show on Netflix. He decided that he was not going to be quiet or careful anymore. He spoke loudly and he spoke very clearly. He told the world that he did not believe every word of the story Meghan had told to Oprah. He thought some parts of it just did not make sense. Once he opened that door, it was like a giant dam had broken and water was rushing out. Suddenly, every other funny person on TV felt like they had permission to speak up too. It was a massive change in how the whole world talked about the couple and their choices. This was a major moment because it wasn't just about one joke. It was about how everyone in the world was starting to feel. The couple had spent a lot of time and money trying to make sure everyone liked them, but it was not working anymore. The jokes were starting to show the truth about the family fights. The sadness between the Windsors was becoming a part of the show. People were tired of the drama and the secrets. They wanted to see things for what they really were. The comedians were finally reflecting the thoughts that normal people had been having for a long time. Chris Rock focused on one part of the story that he found very hard to believe. Meghan had told Oprah that she did not know much about the royal family before she married Harry. She said she did not know their history or how they were supposed to act. Chris Rock pointed out that the royal family is the most famous and most photographed family on the entire planet. Their pictures are on the money people spend and the stamps people use for mail. You can find their history in every library and on every news channel in any country at any time. He said it was impossible to not know who they were. He asked the audience a very simple question that made everyone laugh until their sides hurt. He asked, "You didn't Google these people." It was a very simple joke, but it made a very serious point. Everyone at home had been thinking the same thing, but no one had said it out loud yet. He used a funny story to explain why he was confused. He said it is like marrying into a family that owns a huge beer company and then acting surprised when you find out they drink a lot of beer. It was a way to show that when you join a family that has been famous for 1,000 years, you should probably expect them to follow their old traditions. Next, he talked about the very sad part of the Oprah interview. This was the part about the baby's skin color that had been in the newspapers for many weeks. When Meghan first told that story, the whole world was shocked. It was treated like a terrible secret that proved the royal family was unkind. But Chris Rock looked at it in a different way. He said that almost every family in the world wonders what a new baby will look like. They wonder if the baby will have the dad's eyes or the mom's hair. He argued that it was not an evil secret, but just people being curious about a new baby in the family. Chris thought the story had been changed to look much scarier and more dramatic than it really was. He felt that Harry and Meghan were taking a normal family moment and turning it into a giant scandal for TV. Once he said this so plainly, it became very hard for people to see the story any other way. His words were very powerful because they were simple. He showed everyone that the scandal might just be a regular part of being in a family. This really hurt the couple's plan to make the royal family look like the bad guys in the story. This moment was much bigger than just a few funny jokes. It was a turning point for everyone. Once one person shows you can ask hard questions without the world ending, everyone else moves very fast to do the same. Every writer and every host on late-night TV realized they could now find the humor in the situation. They did not have to be afraid of the internet villains anymore. They were all sitting on their own observations and notes, just waiting for the right time to share them. That time had finally arrived, and the floodgates were open. The door was now wide open, and a giant flood of jokes came out of it. Every late-night TV show and every cartoon show started to join in. They were all ready to walk through the door that Chris Rock had kicked open. The open season had begun, and no one was going to waste any more time being quiet or respectful. They were looking at the things Harry and Meghan said and pointing out the parts that did not match the facts. It was a very hard time for the couple because they could not control the story anymore. American late-night shows are the best at finding the sharpest part of any story. Harry and Meghan were like a gift that had been sitting there for years, just waiting to be opened. A man named Colin Jost on a show called Saturday Night Live made a joke about a trade deal. He said that Britain and America were working on a big deal for their countries. But then came the punchline. All Britain wanted in return was for America to keep Harry and Meghan. This joke was about how neither country really seemed to want the couple to stay for very long. Think about what that joke really means. There are billions of people in those two countries, and yet it felt like no one was jumping up to say, "We want them here." Britain was happy they had moved away, and America was not sure why they had come in the first place. They were like a hot potato that no one wanted to hold for too long. They were floating somewhere in the middle with nowhere to land. They were living in a fancy place in California, but they did not seem to belong to either country anymore. This made the prince look very lonely and far away from his home. The jokes started to get even sharper. People began to point out that Prince Harry had given up his whole life for his new path. He had left his home, his family, and his duties as a prince. And why? To marry an actress from a TV show that many people in America had never even seen before. Meghan was a good actress, but she was not a world-famous superstar before she met Harry. When comedians said it that way, the whole situation started to look very strange to the public. It made Harry's big sacrifice look like it might have been a mistake. Saturday Night Live even made a joke calling Prince Harry an unemployed immigrant. Think about that for a second. They were talking about the grandson of the Queen of England. Usually people would be very shocked by that, but the audience just laughed. This told everyone that the respect for the couple was completely gone. The protection they used to have from the newspapers and the TV was over. You could now say almost anything about them and the public would agree with you. It showed that the royal part of Harry was fading away in the eyes of the people. Harry and Meghan were always presented as a team that stood together against the world. But when a joke like the immigrant joke lands without anyone feeling bad, it shows that the world is no longer on their side. The reverence, which is a deep kind of respect, was gone. The idea that you could not say certain things because of who they were was also gone. The late-night shows took the door Chris Rock opened and walked right in without ever looking back. They were pointing at the things that were already there for everyone to see. The jokes worked because they were based on the truth. The joke about the trade deal worked because it felt like reality. The joke about the TV show worked because it was based on simple facts. It was a new kind of humor where you did not even have to make things up to be funny. You just had to describe the situation accurately and the joke wrote itself. Once it became clear that the most powerful thing you could do was just say what was already happening, there was plenty of material for everyone to use. Meghan had been trying to build a brand where she looked like a normal and relatable person. She made a video about lifestyle tips. In one part, she took pretzels out of a normal store bag and put them into a different, prettier bag. She even used a fancy marker to label it. Jimmy Fallon could not stop talking about the pretzels. He called it one of the great mysteries of our time. He said scientists are trying to figure out if there is life on other planets. But the real question is, why does Meghan Markle move her pretzels into a different bag? The reason this was such a big joke is because of the gap. This is a woman who used to live in actual palaces with many servants to do everything for her. She was part of a family with billions of dollars and 1,000 years of power. And now her job was teaching people how to move snacks from one jar to another. That change in her life was very funny to people. It showed how far she had fallen from the world of kings and queens. She went from generational wealth to teaching ordinary people how to repackage store-bought snacks. Jimmy Fallon also noticed something interesting about who was bringing home the money. Meghan's products were selling very well and very fast, which is impressive, but it meant that Harry was left at home without much of a role. Fallon joked that it was a strange situation when you marry a prince and you end up being the one who has to pay the bills. While Meghan's products were flying off the shelves, Harry was apparently left trying to figure out what to do with thousands of boxes of honey. Think about Harry's life for a moment. His grandmother was the queen for longer than anyone else in history. He grew up in palaces and had a career in the military. He was sixth in line to the throne. And now the running joke is that he is essentially a manager for a warehouse of jam. That is a very sad and funny change in his life story. He walked away from one of the most famous families in the world to end up doing inventory on overpriced condiments in a kitchen. The royal life was being replaced by a grocery store life. The pretzel bag became a symbol for their entire project. It showed that you can try to make a new life look perfect with soft lighting and a beautiful kitchen, but if the content is not good, people will notice. If all you have to offer people is repackaged snacks with a fancy label, they will eventually start to laugh. People were starting to see that the couple was trying to sell them a story that was not quite real. They were trying to look like normal people while still holding onto their fancy titles. Then Harry wrote a very long book to tell his side of the story. He wrote down every sad memory and every fight he ever had with his family. He thought this would make people understand him better, but nobody told him it might be a bad idea to share so many secrets. The book sold many copies, but it also gave comedians a lot of new material to use against him. When you put 600 pages of your most private thoughts on sale in every bookstore, people are going to find things to laugh at. Jimmy Kimmel found a part of the book where Harry talked about getting a cold injury on a very private part of his body. Kimmel turned this into a joke about a children's book. This is what happens when you share too much information. You become a punchline on a show watched by millions of people. That joke is now on the internet forever, and Harry can never take it back. It was a very embarrassing moment for a man who used to be a royal leader and a soldier. It made the sadness between the Windsors look even worse. It wasn't just the stories that people found funny. It was also the way the couple acted. Stephen Colbert poked fun at their secret nicknames. Harry and Meghan call each other M and H. They talked about these letters like they were a very special and holy secret. Colbert thought it sounded like they were trying to be a fancy clothing brand or a big company. He found it hard to believe that two people who say they want privacy spend so much time on TV talking about their secret nicknames for each other. This is what people call a contradiction. A contradiction is when you say one thing but do something else. Harry and Meghan say they hate the cameras and want a quiet, private life, but then they do big interviews and make movies about themselves. It makes people feel like they actually love the attention. They cannot stop doing interviews about how much they hate being interviewed. The more they try to explain how exhausting it is to be on camera, the more they stay on camera. This makes it very hard for anyone to feel sorry for them. Then came the Golden Globes, which is a big party for movie stars. The host, Joe Coy, told a joke that the couple got millions of dollars from Netflix for doing absolutely nothing. That joke hit very hard in that room because it was full of people who work very hard every day. These were actors and writers who have struggled for years to get just one job. They did not think it was fair that Harry and Meghan got so much money without having to work as hard as everyone else. The people in that room knew what it cost to be successful in Hollywood. They knew about the years of hard work and the many times they were told no. But here were two people getting huge checks for content that no one could even describe. The memoir and the documentary made headlines, but the jokes kept finding new ways to poke at the truth. The couple was being roasted by the very industry they were trying to join. It was a very clear sign that they were not being taken seriously by the stars. In England, the comedians were even more upset. For them, this was personal. Harry was their prince. They had watched him grow up from a little boy. They saw him walk behind his mother's coffin when he was only 12 years old. The whole country had rooted for him and forgiven him for many mistakes. But then he went on American TV and said unkind things about his grandmother and his father. This felt like a betrayal to the people who had loved him for his whole life. When British comedians like Jimmy Carr spoke up, they were settling a score. Carr pointed out that Meghan calls herself a feminist, but she quit her whole career the very second a prince showed interest in her. He found it hard to believe that someone who believes in independent women would give up her job to join a royal family. He also made jokes about how they complained about their lives being hard while they were still spending public money from the people of Britain. The audacity of that was too much for people to ignore. Carr also brought up an old photo of Harry in a very bad costume from a long time ago. He said that no matter how many kindness podcasts Harry makes, that photo will always be on the internet. You cannot lecture the world about being good and tolerant when you have done things like that in your past. The image will never go away, and no documentary can change that fact. It was a reminder that Harry's past was not as perfect as he was trying to make it look now. Another comedian named Simon Brodkin actually sat down and watched the whole Netflix movie about Harry and Meghan. He said he went in with an open mind, wanting to hear their side of the story. But by the end of the 6 long episodes, he actually ended up hating them. He said the movie was supposed to fix their image and make people understand them, but it did the exact opposite. It made them look like they were just complaining about things that were not really problems. Brodkin found a part in Harry's book where he called a date night a fun grenade. Brodkin said that after reading that, he actually felt bad for other members of the family who were in trouble. When your writing is that bad, you make everyone else look like the reasonable ones. It was a very sharp way to show that Harry's book was making him look silly. The neutral viewers, who did not have an opinion before, were now turning away from the couple because of the way they were acting. The documentary was supposed to be the moment where people finally understood and got on board with the couple's story. Instead, it had the opposite effect on anyone who was not already a fan. Whatever good feelings had been building up just collapsed. The couple was trying too hard to look like victims, and it was not working. People were seeing through the dramatic pauses and the tearful moments. They were starting to realize that the story might be more about the couple's own feelings than about what actually happened. The British were not done. Kelly Osbourne, who grew up in a very famous and messy family, had some very harsh words. She saw what real trouble looked like when she was a kid because her family lived their whole lives on TV. When she looks at Harry, she does not see someone who has struggled. She sees a whining person who acts like he is the only one who has ever had a hard time. She did not frame it gently. She said exactly what she was thinking without any filters. She said they were handed every big contract and every major opportunity in the world, but they fumbled all of them. They were given podcasts and movies and deals that most people would work 10 years to get. But in her view, they showed up, took the money, and delivered nothing that was worth remembering. She thought it was crazy that Harry was trying to be a moral leader after all the mistakes he had made. The contradiction between his past and his new message was just too big to ignore. Sharon Osbourne was even more serious. She talked about the estrangement, which is when a family stops talking to each other. Sharon did not talk to her own father for 18 years, so she knows how hard it is. But she said that when her father was sick, she went to take care of him. She thought it was very sad that Harry and Meghan cut off their family over things like bad newspapers. She said that a family is more important than bad press or what people say about you. Sharon was also very worried about the two children, Archie and Lilibet. She said it was heartbreaking that they were growing up without any cousins, aunts, uncles, or grandparents to play with. She warned that isolating children from their family ends very badly. Coming from someone who has watched fame destroy families over and over again, that was a very serious warning. It made people stop laughing for a moment and think about the children who were caught in the middle of this big fight. Bill Maher said the real problem was dignity. He said the Queen understood that you do not win people over by complaining on TV. You win them over by doing the work quietly and keeping your head high. He said that Harry and Meghan don't understand that restraint is a kind of strength. They expect everyone to just agree with them, and if you don't, they think you are the problem. You do not win people over by listing every one of your problems on a talk show. The final proof that the world had turned against them was the cartoon South Park. They made a whole episode called The Worldwide Privacy Tour. It showed a prince and his wife flying a private jet around the world and screaming through megaphones that they wanted to be left alone. This was the perfect joke because it showed exactly how silly the situation had become. It was not an exaggeration, it was just a description of what the couple was actually doing. The joke wrote itself because the reality was so strange. Family Guy also made a joke about Harry getting a giant check for made-up nonsense. It showed Harry quietly regretting his choice to leave the palace. These cartoon shows do not care about being nice or respectful. They just say what the public is already thinking. The jokes were writing themselves because the couple's life had become so different from the one they had before. The privacy they were looking for seemed to involve a lot of cameras and a lot of talking about themselves. There was even a puppet show in Britain called Spitting Image that made fun of them. When the couple tried to get the video taken off the internet, it only made more people want to see it. You cannot control the internet, and trying to hide a joke only makes the joke bigger. It made them look like they were trying to control the story again, and it did not work. The more they tried to be quiet, the louder the jokes became. They were losing the battle for their own reputation. In the end, this isn't about people being mean or jealous. It is because people stopped believing the story. The details kept shifting and the complaints kept getting longer. People looked at the giant mansion and the fancy lifestyle and realized they could not feel sorry for people who have everything. They realized that Harry and Meghan's only real product was the drama with their own family. Without the fight and the secrets, there would be nothing left for them to sell to the world. Without the family tension, there is no headline and no book deal. This is why the drama never seems to stop. Moving on would mean giving up the only thing that keeps them in the news. Their big deals with Spotify and Netflix are now being called punchlines. Until the couple starts to do what they say, the laughter is never going to go away. The jokes will keep coming because the distance between their words and their actions is just too big for anyone to ignore. The sadness between the Windsors has become a story for everyone else